1969, the Tarpon and the Croc. I've told several stories that center around my teenage years on Gatun Lake, and here's another one. You may want to pause the video from time to time to zoom in on some of the images. When I was about 13 years old, my Sunday school teacher, Ken Manthorne, took a few of us boys up to his little island on Gatun Lake in the former Panama Canal Zone. That would have been around 1966 or so. Billy Boatwright, Ted Snyder, Fred Bales, and I were the Ken's Island Gang. Bob Whitehead and Steve Nellis came along a bit later. The island was about a quarter acre in size, rising 10 or more feet out of the water, and was about 7 miles from the boat ramp in Gamboa. The actual ship channel was about a mile straight out from the island. Think of Gatun Lake as a freshwater bridge across the Continental Divide that connects the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Ships start at sea level, float up to the lake level, navigate across the 166 square mile lake, and then drop back down to sea level on the other side. It's about 50 miles from ocean to ocean. Gatun Lake used to be the biggest man-made lake in the world until the Aswan Dam was built in Egypt in the mid-1960s. Peacock bass from Venezuela were introduced into Gatun Lake in the 60s as well, and quickly spread throughout the entire waterway. We began catching them about 2 years after our Sunday school crew started going to Ken's Island. We would catch up to 30 a day, and then go back to the island to clean and eat them. I always took some home to my mom. She loved them. We had a killer rope swing that hung from a tree on the island. It swung out over a fairly deep water hole on that side of the little hill. That's where we would toss the bass carcasses after we'd cleaned them. Uh-oh. Late one afternoon, after cleaning fish and eating dinner, Steve and I were hanging out under the bohio when we heard a loud splash down by the swing. The water was swirling all around, but we couldn't see anything. A few minutes later, it happened again. At that point, I got my spear gun, cocked it, and went down to sit on the edge of the bank, ready to shoot whatever it was that might come up again. Sure enough, moments later, a huge tarpon came cruising by to eat some of those bass carcasses. I took my shot and saw the fish go into a slow-mo dive, but my spear didn't stick in it. So I recocked the gun and slid in the water. I had no mask or snorkel or fins, but I knew about where the fish had gone. It was getting dark by then. As I sank deeper into the water, I began to make out a large silver shape on the bottom. With no mask on, I shot at it as best as I could in the murky, dark water. Amazingly, I hit it and the shaft stuck. When I pulled the fish out of the water, I was amazed to see that I'd hit it right between the eyes. That fish was as long as I was tall. It was huge. Some Indians dropped by to visit that night, and they took the thing home. I was glad about that. On another trip that same summer, I set up my jungle hammock between the swing tree and another one nearby, facing the canal, so I could watch the ships through the hammock's mosquito netting as they passed through the canal a mile away. Steve had a tent out on the front of the island, and that's where he was sleeping. But not for long. About 2 in the morning, I was awakened with a very inquisitive bump on my rear. Thinking I had imagined it, I sat frozen, wondering if it was real. About that time, it happened again, except much harder. I immediately let out a loud yell. Whatever it was made a grunt and then splashed back into the water next to the swing. It had to have been a fairly large croc. Nothing else would have or could have done that. I spent the rest of the night hollering every few minutes, hoping to keep whatever it was at bay. It never came back, but down in the tent, Steve wasn't too happy with me. Neither of us got a wink of sleep after that. It was during that same summer, and not far from the island, the Billy boat hit a large croc while skiing, and fell. That was the only tarpon I ever landed because they were so hard to catch. We caught lots of small crocs by hand, however, and shot all the big ones we could hit. Who knows what happened to the one that tried to bite my ass that night?